From scenic Coloradoan canyon expanses whose breathtaking ranges are roamed by all manner of ghostly manifestations, to West Virginian heritage railroad lines where the spirits of the dead wander after dark. Are you sure you're ready to brave our 5th list of picks for some of the most haunted state parks in the US? Number 5. Greenwood Furnace State Park. Greenwood Furnace State Park, which is located within Huntingdon County, Pennsylvania, is a 423-acre expanse placed near the historic iron-making center that was the Greenwood Furnace, which includes the now dormant ghost town of Greenwood itself that formed and grew around the ironworks. Historically, in 1834, the Greenwood Furnace would open for business and would rapidly grow into northern Huntingdon County's primary center of industry. At the height of its production, this particular operation could produce around 5 tons of pig iron per day, and over time, a community would form around it in order to support the needs of an expanding workforce. At its peak, sometime through the 1870s, this makeshift town would sport 2 furnaces, the ironmaster's mansion, a church and school, a company store, a blacksmith shop, a wagon stop, and more. In 1904, changes to the iron industry would result in the closing of local furnaces, after which the populace of Greenwood was left jobless and forced from their homes to seek their fortunes elsewhere. In 1906, the state of Pennsylvania would acquire Greenwood lands from the Logan Iron and Steel Company, which they would utilize to establish the Greenwood Forest Tree Nursery, and in 1924, the state park we know today was formally established. Greenwood Furnace State Park remains open into the present, offering parkgoers a glimpse at the history of the region and industry of the North, alongside plentiful campsites, picnic areas, hunting grounds, a mess of trails, and drops for boating, angling, and swimming. Not surprisingly, the whole of Greenwood grounds are rumored to be haunted by the restless spirits of those forced from their family homes so long ago, and also by the wandering souls of those who died near, some to natural causes, others in brutal furnace accidents, and others still to more nefarious means. And throughout the area, both officials and visitors have reported disembodied voices and old-timey music that drifts on the winds, footsteps detected from vacant spaces, and encounters with both shadowy manifestations and with full-bodied apparitions in clothing or uniforms spanning the community's past, some bearing grievous wounds, and others seemingly lost and likely searching for their rightful homes. Within the blacksmith shop, the entity of a woman in a lacy white gown, believed to be the spirit of one Anna Monsell, who hanged herself on site sometime through the 1870s, has been sighted drifting eerily about, and the local cemetery is said to boast orbs and strong poltergeist activity which only intensifies after dark. Also reported across Greenwood, and confined to no area in particular, are objects spied moving on their own, odd knocking noises and instances of doors slamming shut spontaneously, and run-ins with a spectral man in a brown suit, with the small spirit of a boy in blue clothing, and also with the phantom of a shaggy red Irish setter type dog. Number 4. The Cass Scenic Railroad State Park. The Cass Scenic Railroad State Park, which is located off of Cass Road out of Cass, West Virginia, is a public expanse and heritage railroad initially built to service the local lumber industry, which, notably at one time, toted the largest double-band sawmill not just in the state or country, but in the world. Historically, in 1901, the town of Cass was founded as a company town under the West Virginia Pulp and Paper Company, now West Rock, and was purposed to serve the ranks working cutting spruce and hemlock for the West Virginia Spruce Lumber Company. Subsequently, when work was started the same year on a standard gauge railroad climbing the Black Allegheny Mountain, surrounding lands were heavily logged under the paper company. In June of 1942, WVP&P would sell its operation in Cass to the Mower Lumber Company, after which Mower would run the line until 1960, when the mill and railroad were shut down amidst a declining regional timber industry. In 1963, Cass's first tourist train would leave its depot. In 1977, the Cass Scenic Railroad State Park would officially acquire the old town site, and more recently, in 2015, the Durbin and Greenbrier Valley Railroad would assume operations of the local rail line, under lease agreement with the state of West Virginia directly. Today, parkgoers can ride historic converted log cars carried by an authentic and extremely powerful geared logging locomotive, while the park itself offers tours of both the town and of its shops, complete with viewings of fully restored structures and refurbished company housing actually for rent for those who wish to stay on site. Chillingly, the whole of this weathered town site is rumored to harbor the ghosts of its former residents since past, and both officials and parkgoers have reported a range of chilling phenomena experienced across cast grounds, including extreme cold patches felt in adverse weather, disembodied voices heard from spaces that are empty or even locked up, phantom footsteps, and a commotion suggesting some semblance of this aged community is still continuing on from just beyond the veil. Phantom train whistles have been heard on the winds. The sounds of trees being felled are all but common. The ghostly wailing of a woman is often heard after dark, and encounters with apparitions in clothing suggesting work in the rail or timber industries, many of whom are holding lanterns or other tools from life, happen on a surprisingly regular basis. Easily the most famous spook stories surrounding the Cass Scenic Railroad State Park tell of a ghostly little girl who, it's claimed, in life became very ill and passed within one of the site's abodes. This small spirit is rumored to harbor a mischievous streak and has been known to dart between and behind the living at lightning-quick speeds, often appearing as nothing more than a white blur, all the while using her powers to play small pranks, like hiding visitors' personal possessions, causing electronic malfunctions, or even tying shoelaces together. Number 3. Dead Horse Point State Park. Dead Horse Point State Park, which is located in San Juan County in southeastern Utah, is a 5,362-acre expanse featuring breathtaking panoramas and overlooks of both the Colorado River and of the Canyonlands National Park. That's rather odd moniker is derived from a somewhat disturbing legend. As this fable goes, sometime through the 19th century, this particular locale was utilized as a corral for wild mustangs that roamed the mesa top. Cowboys of the era would round up groups of said mustangs and would herd them across the narrow neck of land leading to the point, after which they would quickly fence off the neck with branches and brush, forming a natural corral by way of sheer cliff faces that the horses wouldn't dare attempt to traverse. After the horses were corralled safely, the cowboys would then select those they had wished to keep and would let the others go free. On one occasion, however, it's told that for whatever reason, a group of horses were left corralled on the point without water for days, where they died of thirst with the Colorado in view just 2,000 feet below, earning the locale its ominous name. Through the 1940s and into the late 50s, following a slew of uranium strikes, a number of mining companies would start operations near Dead Horse Point, after which said deposits were mined for the creation of weapons-grade uranium through World War II and through the Cold War era, as well as for use in nuclear reactors. Unfortunately, widespread mining of the area would eventually create concern amongst locals and those who recognized the significance of the natural point, and in 1959, the expanse was transformed into a state park, effectively ending mining of the region. Dead Horse Point State Park remains open into the present, offering a mess of multi-use trails, campsites, a range of overlooks, a visitor center, and plentiful picnic, rec, and event space. Eerily, according to a range of local legends, the whole of Dead Horse lands are rumored to be roamed by the ghosts of the many who died across its bounds, dating all the way back to ancient times, and those frequenting the site have reported extreme cold spots felt through the heat of summer, disembodied voices carried on the winds, many of which that speak in ancient native dialects, and encounters with shadowy figures, with the spectral silhouettes of cowboys sighted riding at a distance, and with entities in native attires that appear Paiute, Ute, or Navajo in design. Chillingly, both campers and rangers have documented sightings of various spirits around designated campsites, many of which who seemingly go about tasks from lives long since spent for moments before fading away, while several terrifying instances from those staying in tents have told of commotions, of footsteps, and of the sounds of people detected outside of their shelters in the middle of the night, resulting in them opening their doors or windows only to find their sites dark and completely void of life. Lastly, and heartbreakingly, the mournful whinnies of the many horses left to die under the sun are often heard echoing through the canyon after dark, and several have sworn they've detected the thundering sound of hoofsteps rushing suddenly through the expanse, leading many to believe these once condemned creatures are now able to run free in the afterlife. Number 2. Castlewood Canyon State Park. Castlewood Canyon State Park, which is located off of State Route 83 out of Franktown, Colorado, is a popular public expanse containing the iconic Castlewood Canyon Dam, which burst in 1933 to catastrophic results. Historically, through the 1860s, gold strikes across what was recognized as Wildcat Canyon would result in an influx of settlers to the region. Through the 1880s, and under promise of clean irrigation waters, homesteading of the area would begin, and in 1890, Castlewood Canyon Dam was completed. Unfortunately, over the years, the dam, which was poorly and cheaply constructed, would become increasingly unsafe, until August 3rd of 1933, when torrential rains resulted in its retainer breaking through, which in turn would lead to one of the worst floods in Coloradoan history. In 1961, landholder Lawrence P. Brown would deed 87 acres of the Lucas homestead to the state park system. In 1964, Castlewood Canyon State Park was officially established. Over the following decades, additional lands were acquired until the expanse grew to 2,303 acres total, and more recently, through August of 1993, the site's visitors center was created. Castlewood Canyon State Park remains open into the present, offering a mess of trails, picnic areas, breathtaking scenery, and more. Over its many years, the lands now contained within Castlewood have played host to a range of untimely deaths, from accidents to suicides to murders, and it's believed park bounds now harbor the spirits of those claimed to cross them, and those braving the expanse have told of orbs and silhouettes captured in photography and video, of the constant feelings of being watched, of being followed, or even of being touched by a presence unseen, and of encounters with both shadowy figures and with full-bodied apparitions in clothing spanning the eras. One more popular and disturbing local tale tells of how in 1884, one Conrad Moschel was killed in a native attack along the Cherokee Trail, on a bluff just to the south of the park. While everyone else in his party but him survived, Conrad's body was discovered with an arrow in his back, with a bullet wound to his forehead and minus his scalp, and his restless spirit has been viewed on the very same bluff, as well as wandering throughout the canyon, sometimes bearing his bloody wounds. Also reported at Castlewood are extreme cold spots, objects spied moving on their own, instances of doors opening and slamming shut by themselves, phantom knocking, disembodied voices and footsteps, and odd electronic malfunctions. On some rather dark closing notes, on April 7th of 1965, the body of 26-year-old Roger Henry Floth, or at least pieces of him, were discovered within the park. Floth's torso and head were discovered on the western side of the Castlewood Canyon Bridge, while his legs were picked up on its eastern end, and a thorough coroner's inspection would reveal that this poor young man likely hadn't been dead for long, or even dead at all, before he was decapitated and dismembered. Incidentally, on October 26th of 1980, another body was discovered on site, that of Violet Newman, who'd been assaulted, shot, and whose killer had covered her body in a sheet for hikers to later stumble across. In both of said cases, these individuals' killers were never charged, and their spirits have been sighted drifting about with mournful looks upon their faces. Number 1. The Fort Worden Historical State Park. The Fort Worden Historical State Park, which is located off of Battery Way out of Port Townsend in Washington, is a popular 433-acre expanse whose defense, which was constructed as part of 3 forts at the entrance of the Admiralty Inlet as part of what was recognized as the Triangle of Fire, boasts the title of being one of the largest Endicott period forts in existence. Historically, in 1879, the first structure built on future park lands was that of the Point Wilson Light. In 1883, Alexander's Castle would be established under Reverend John B. Alexander as the oldest standing structure still on site, and in 1897, construction of Fort Worden was started with the point dedicated as an active U.S. Army base in 1902. In 1914, the old light would be replaced, and notably through its service, the Triangle of Fire would ironically never fire a single hostile shot, resulting in its guns being removed through World War I for reuse across battlefronts in Europe. Following World War I, all of said remaining guns were considered obsolete, with most scrapped through World War II, and over subsequent years, Worden would be utilized as a training grounds, until 1953 when its service was deemed unnecessary, and the site was officially decommissioned. In 1957, the fort and its grounds were acquired under the state, who would utilize the campus as a treatment center for troubled youths until 1973, when the expanse was dedicated as a state park, after which later the same year, its campgrounds were established. The Fort Worden Historical State Park remains open into the present, offering options in tours, overnight accommodations, and dining and drink, alongside its popular museum and ample space for events, meetings, receptions, and more. Rather classically, the whole of Fort Worden is rumored to be haunted by the spirits of those tied to its bounds in lives since past, and those braving the site have reported orbs and ghostly silhouettes captured in photography and video, the unnerving feelings of being watched, of being followed, or even of being touched by a presence unseen, and encounters with full-bodied apparitions in old-timey military garb. One popular Fort Worden tale tells of how long ago a young sergeant or guard who was depressed or discouraged over his job or personal life accidentally killed himself by way of self-inflicted gunshot wound, courtesy of a firearm he was improperly handling. Now it's believed his soul, restless over his untimely passing, remains within his old guardhouse, where he's been known to manifest as a shadowy, irritable presence that's seemingly shy or wary of the living. Also reported across Worden grounds are ghostly lights spied within buildings lacking running electricity, ominous moans detected both from the tunnels and from the barracks, and the smells of burning coal, of melting rubber, and of hot sulfur that permeate the front area of the main house. A final Fort Worden fable surrounds the aforementioned John B. Alexander, who built his prestigious abode for his bride-to-be back in Scotland, and tells of how when he went to fetch his sweetheart, he'd arrived to find her married to another man. While John would sell his creation in 1892, some claim that following his death, his restless spirit returned to the place where both his perspective and life were altered so heavily, and to date, run-ins with an entity bearing his likeness are all but common. Taking its ridiculously fascinating and lengthy history into account, and coupling it with such an impressive assortment of associated local legends and purported encounters with the unknown, we felt the ever-stalwart Fort Worden was a perfect pick as this list's most haunted state park in the US. Thanks for joining us for our 5th list of picks for some of the most haunted state parks in the US. If you enjoyed hearing our histories and ghost stories, subscribe to our channel, like this upload, and share us with anyone you feel could use a good scare. Pleasant dreams.